American poet Audre Lorde once said, "The principal horror of any system which defines the good in terms of profit rather than in terms of human need is that robs our work of its erotic value, its erotic power." When she uses the term erotic, she's not referring to sexuality, but an intrinsic power that comes from doing the activities that makes one feel fulfilled. Capitalist society has made it increasingly difficult to connect with one's inner self, as there is less time and money for friends, family, and pursuing hobbies. The idea of self-introspection under an oppressive capitalist system is explored in the 2022 video game Citizen Sleeper. In this game, the player controls a sleeper, which is a robot based on the scan of a human brain. Sleepers are owned by the S&ARP Corporation and are treated more as property than people. You begin the game after having just escaped S&ARP to the Eye, a rundown space station on the fringes of the universe. As such, you need to worry about things like finding and paying for food, maintaining your decaying robot body, and staying out of trouble from S&ARP and other organizations. So we've established that the game is about agency under oppressive capitalism, but something that really surprised me about this game is it felt very player-friendly. When a video game has gameplay that is not in accord with the diegetic narrative, that's something called Ludonarrative dissonance. The term was coined by Clint Hawking in response to the game BioShock, which promoted free will with player decision, but narratively only followed one overarching pathway. Before we decide if Citizen Sleeper truly exhibits ludonarrative dissonance, let's first understand what the game's key mechanics are. One of the first mechanics you have in the game is the choice of dialogue, actions, and thoughts. For example, when you first wake up, you choose what you decide to think about, and this changes what you know about your character and creates a sense of agency from its interactivity. A second key mechanic is gambling with your daily dice on different actions. Higher dice numbers mean a higher chance of being successful in an action, and the number of dice you can have each day is dependent on your health status. So, to increase the odds of getting the dice numbers you want, it's important to maintain health. Although the game has days, the day only ends once the player decides to go to sleep, usually after using all their dice and addressing the narrative points of the day. There is no pressure to make decisions quickly, and players can take their time reading through dialogue and considering optimal ways to use their dice. Assuming the game is meant to demonstrate the struggle for survival under an oppressive capitalist society, let's now see where these player-friendly mechanics might be showing some ludonarrative dissonance. First, there's the lack of time constraint that enables the player to behave calmly and act strategically, contrary to the pacing of these actions in other games where there's often a time limit. For example, let's say someone is threatening you. You can't spend a minute in many games or in real life deciding if you should fight or flee. Second are the positively skewed odds. While the dice do involve randomness from the dice numbers and the outcomes of actions, they ultimately lean towards a positive result. After rolling just 10 dice, most people's average roll would be between a 3 and 4, so bad luck is pretty hard to come by in this game. To add to this, rather than increasing in difficulty as you play, players will automatically get +1 and eventually a +2 added to their dice when they take certain actions. Third, the game has no fail state characterized by a game over or restart option. Even though it feels like a survival game because the game narratively focuses on escaping death, earning money, getting food, and maintaining health, there is no possibility for the sleeper to die. You can fail certain activities, which could hurt you as you get bonuses from successfully completing them, but to fail certain activities is not life-threatening. Why is Citizen Sleeper even a game? Do the game mechanics in Citizen Sleeper support the concept of systematic oppression that is being communicated diegetically? Even though the gameplay is easy, you could argue the game emphasizes the meaninglessness of choice under an oppressive capitalist society. There's no time pressure because it doesn't really matter what you pick anyway. A system-designed game ending will occur regardless of how much thought you put into any specific decision, even if you mess up on certain activities. Positively skewed odds means that you are being pushed to follow a path chosen for you. As long as you keep playing, you will eventually reach the end. There is no choice to just not reach the end unless you quit the game. And lastly, how can this game be about survival under capitalism if death is impossible? Why make it a game at all if choice doesn't really matter? Assuming that a player is playing the game to survive to the very end, actions and NPC interactions feel hollow because failing to maintain a relationship or to do a task for them won't make the game end. The previous nihilistic argument relies heavily on Citizen Sleeper being just about reaching the end as efficiently or strategically as possible. Helping others, reading through dialogue, and debating decisions carries little value to finishing the game. But what if we look at Citizen Sleeper as a different type of survival game, or something different altogether? It's cliche, but as many forms of media tells us, life isn't just about surviving, it's about living a fulfilling life.
On the axiom, you will survive.
I don't want to survive! I want to live!
You actually know that your character's main goal is not just to survive. If that was the case, then the Sleeper would have never escaped from S&R Corporation in the first place. Leaving the life of servitude puts the Sleeper in mortal danger, so the Sleeper's goal is not survival, but that erotic pleasure Audrey's described stemming from fulfilling activity. Many times in Citizen Sleeper, the choices you make don't impact the ending of the game, but it does impact how you feel and what you know about the characters and situations. Thinking about my own life, a lot of relationships and hobbies I have won't necessarily impact my career, where I live, or my salary, but relationships and hobbies can add depth and meaning to my life. The corporation may not care about the individuals, but people can choose to care about each other. You can play without many of the side quests, but these side quests are what gives your Sleeper relationships and meaning. While it is impossible to play the game without interacting with other NPCs, you can choose to play a game that is highly self-centered, focusing on doing the actions most beneficial to yourself and completing the game as quickly as possible. Although you can't fail the game overall, you can fail certain goals. Despite the safeguard of the rules of the game, it can still feel difficult. I found myself debating if I should really help others when I felt like I was barely making sure I had enough dice, health, energy, and money to accomplish my more selfish goals. Because I was constantly thinking about resource limitations instead of just always doing the right thing, the game felt more real to me than a lot of other media. The gameplay of Citizen Sleeper also struck me as more difficult when I cared not only about myself, but also the people around me. So, is there ludonarrative dissonance in Citizen Sleeper? Do the game mechanics detract from the narrative's message of the struggle for survival under a capitalist and oppressive system? Thinking back on Audre Lorde's quote and what I've discussed this far, no, Citizen Sleeper does not have ludonarrative dissonance. However, the game mechanics do not support the diegetic concept of survival under capitalism, but rather the idea that these conditions can make it difficult to live a fulfilling life. The Sleeper lives for fulfillment beyond profitability and survival. The player too may find more fulfillment by fostering voluntary relationships. If a player only plays to survive without making any time for human connection and any other values, how is that any different from living under the oppressive system of the corporation?